What's up, guys? This is Bobby again with GrowthView, and today we've got Dre Evans from That's My Property, and he's got a multifamily podcast called Multifamily by the Slice. So I'm excited to have Dre on, and we're going to be talking about outreach and a few other just topics that Dre has some great expertise and insight on. So I appreciate you being here with us today, man.
Awesome, man. I'm glad to be here, Bobby. Thank you.
All right. Well, Dre, give us a little background of yourself, your history, and then we can dive in.
For me, in a nutshell, Bobby, I just want to inspire people through real estate. My background stems from Chicago. I joined the gang when I was 12, and then I later transitioned from that when an enemy of mine at the time told me about a school called West Point. Heard about the service academies, eventually went to Annapolis in 2016, graduated at the top of my class, and from there I started engaging in outreach and came to San Diego and then bought my first 4-unit, $2 million property in the Pacific Beach submarket of San Diego. And from there, the real estate empire business just took out. I formed That's My Property, and I went full head into multifamily real estate. And so now between my meetup group, the multifamily itself, as well as the podcast, I'm trying to leverage all that to let everybody win, teach people about real estate from an education and a consulting standpoint, but also teaching youth and young adults about real estate and using real estate, whether I'm hosting events there or through the podcast or through books and articles to inspire them.
That's awesome. Man, before the call, I know we've spoken once before, and I was excited for the call because I was just like, Dre has great energy. Like he gives off just a lot of positivity, and that's a cool turnaround. You said you were in a gang at a very young age, and you made a pretty big shift to the Naval Academy, huh?
Yeah, man, I was in a gang, south side of Chicago. My mom has 4 brothers, so I have 4 uncles. They're all in the streets, all drug addicts. One actually was just killed 2 weeks ago due to drug-related things, and my mom is actually on her way now to view the body. And so, unfortunately, I never really had that male role model. My biological father was a drug addict. I'm a triplet. My mom was, you're driving to work and you forget something and you turn back around and you come back
Yeah.
home. And that's what happened to my mom. She worked at FedEx. She worked there for over 20 years. She did like global sales, and she was driving home and she turned back around and come in the house and she smelled this funny smell. And she goes in the basement and there's my biological father, Tony, smoking crack in front of me and my 2 triplet brothers. And from there, they got a divorce and we moved in with my grandmother. So my grandmother and my mother pretty much raised me until I had a stepdad come in the middle of my life. And with that lack of role model leadership, I looked for that coming of age male identity and elsewhere. And it's easy to do that too in Chicago. I wanted that protection. I wanted that coolness factor of feeling like I could handle myself and people having that respect for me, like, Dre's got it, don't mess with Dre type of thing. And so that's why I did it. And I learned a lot of things between the drive-by shootings and the fights and all that, but it made me really value connections. And I've leveraged a lot of the skill sets. And I think that's what makes me unique as an operator. There's a synergy between the lessons that I learned being a gang member, and there's a synergy between the lessons I learned being a Naval Academy officer and how I apply that to multifamily real estate.
Wow. That's a very unique story, and I can imagine going from gang to the military. Now you're trying to, I'm sure both have their own extreme, but now you're kind of like back in, for lack of a better word, normie land. You're not at war on either end.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Thanks for sharing some detail on that. And I know you wanted to talk a little bit today about outreach, and tell us a little bit about what outreach means to you and just how you're leveraging that in your real estate career.
Outreach means, first and foremost, for youth and for young adults and young professionals, doing all I can to provide with them with the tools and the connections to be successful with real estate and financial literacy. And that also stems to real estate operators in general, or people that are beginners that are trying to get started in real estate. Me doing all I can to add value to them. Outreach to me is opening my connection book, being a connector, sharing whatever books, wisdom, podcasts, mastermind groups, whatever I can offer and add value to people without expecting anything in return.
That's awesome. And you mentioned you run a meetup and some of these other things. Dive into some of those a little bit. Like, tell me about your meetup that you've started and just other initiatives that you're doing and leading that have made an impact in your local community and the lives that you're touching.
Yeah, so Jennifer Santoso, she's a mortgage broker for Toro Capital here in San Diego. She was the founder of Opportunity Knox, and she ran the group for a few years. And I admit, when I met Jennifer at a meetup group in Del Mar, actually at one of her events during COVID, I think it was the first one after the city reopened everything, and we connected and we stayed in contact. And I mentioned to her that I wanted to eventually start my own meetup within the city. And eventually she called me one random day when I was in Arizona visiting my brother. And she said, "Hey, Dre, what do you think about me just passing Opportunity Knocks to you? I trust you. We have a good relationship. You wouldn't be starting completely from scratch. You'd have a few people already, and you would already have it set up and meetup. All you would do is take it from there and leverage it." And so I took that, I ran with it. I had a logo created for us. We rechanged the branding. I brought in 5 sponsors. So now our events are covered. We've got the drinks and appetizers covered. We've got media coverage covered. We have parking covered. We have the event venue itself at the Monster Ross Hotel in Point Loma. Beautiful brand new location. The general manager and the hotel manager, they are amazing people. And we fully sponsor that event. We bring in speakers in addition to the connection piece that people have. That's what makes us different. And we've easily become one of the top 2 real estate meetup groups in San Diego for sure. I mean, we have over 70, 80 people at each event.
That's awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a fun experience. The location, the food, the drinks, the parking, and not only that, it sounds like some great knowledge every week. That's awesome.
Hmm.
Very cool. Well, when it comes to helping new folks in real estate, let's kind of start maybe from square one. If there was someone who was diving in, like, what are some of the maybe the top few things that you tend to share with someone who's like, "Hey, I'm square one. I really want to, get going with this." Like, where would you steer them?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bobby. I get this question a lot, especially when I'm at the meetup through the podcast or people reaching out to me via LinkedIn or email or my Calendly link or even through Instagram. Just, "Hey, Dre, how do I get started in multifamily or real estate in general?" And I always tell them first, there's a lot of different lanes in real estate, as you know. There's the multifamily side of the house. Well, we could just say commercial, right? Even within commercial, there's multifamily, there's retail, there's industrial, there's mobile home parks, there's RV parks, there's self-storage, like the list goes on and on. And then there's just land. And then obviously you can go outside of that. You can go single family, short-term rental, single family flip, wholesaling, interior design, property manager. You know the deal. So I always encourage people to listen to Bigger Pockets and do some reading on just everything within the real estate game and take your strengths and weaknesses and see what best aligns with you. Because even within a particular niche like multifamily, as you know, there's different categories. Everybody can't be an underwriter. Everyone doesn't like to be an Excel beast. And everyone doesn't have the ability and doesn't have the interest to constantly look at numbers and crunch numbers and change formulas. But some people might be great at capital raising, but that obviously isn't for everyone. If you're not a big people person and you don't want to constantly be connecting and networking, that's not the job for you. So I just encourage people to listen to Bigger podcasts and articles, find out based on your strengths and weaknesses what role and what sector within real estate you would best like. And then once you find that sector and you narrow down that sector, that's when you start reading everything you can between articles and books, joining mastermind groups, and whatever it relates to that specific niche, like if it's flipping or if it's wholesaling, that's all you need to be listening to or reading or engaging with people and connecting with people within that. Learn the vocabulary and the education for that particular niche. Like multifamily, for example, our vocabulary is very differently from other real estate terms, right? A lot of people can be great at single family and wholesaling and things of that nature. But when it comes to multifamily, you got to know what an equity multiple is. You have to know what a cap rate is. You have to know what a preferred return is, what an LP investor, what a syndication is, what a GP investor, as you know. And a lot of people don't know that if they're not in the multifamily commercial space. So once you learn that vocabulary, that's essential, in my opinion, before you start actively connecting with people. So find your needs first, get the education, and then connect, because it's going to be a whole lot harder for you if you're trying to connect with people and you don't even know the vocabulary, because if they're trying to have a basic conversation with you about, oh, they say cap rate or they say preferred return, and you're like, what is that? What do you automatically diminish a lot of the value from the conversation. But if you have that background, you can actually ask more pointed questions to better help you in the end too. And so once you, I know this is a more long-winded answer, but I do believe it takes steps. And then in terms of the connecting, right? I know a lot of people also have issues with, how do I connect with that person that has experience? How do I connect with that person that is a huge operator and they have all this value and they are like, I want to be like that gal, or I want to be like that guy one day? My thing to you is, find a way to add value. It goes back to value. Find a way to add value to them. And that could be through so many different ways. Do your research. If they have a podcast, listen to it. If they have articles, if they have books, whatever medium, if their website, look at it. There might be glitches in their website. There might be errors within their link tree, or misspelling in an article that you might see on their LinkedIn or social media. So what you do is you reach out to them. You say, hey, I'm so and so. I'm Jimmy. I looked at your stuff. I want to get into wholesaling, and I noticed that when I tried to pull your link, there were some glitches. You provided value to them by addressing an issue that they might have not known. If you are tech savvy, you can say, hey, maybe I can help redo your website for you, or maybe I can help be your assistant and do admin tasks for you, or maybe I can, if you have properties, maybe I can help do some landscape. I'm hand you with a hammer. Maybe I can help do work at your properties. Maybe I can help do your social media campaign, or help you create or amp up your social media presence, because that's so big within the industry. There's so many different things that you can do to add value. But notice how I gave a bunch of different examples of doing research on the person that that you look up to, and doing research on the person that you're trying to reach. And you're providing value. You're providing value by making a recommendation on a need they need to fulfill. And in turn, what's going to happen is, then they're going to mentor you or bring you under their wing. And it might, even if it's as simple as being an assistant or whatever the task may be, half the battle is also just being in the room. You'd be amazed at how much you will learn. Let's say you're in a room of millionaires and you were in the room every day. If you were a janitor, how much knowledge you would have by being in that room, by listening to those phone call conversations, how they raised capital, how they raised a deal, how they spoke to investors, how they spoke to other multi-million dollar operators. It will forever change the way you think and perceive business in the world. And that's another, aside that alone, aside from the connections and things they would teach you, is what will make you stand out. That is where I would start first. And based on that, based on the unique relationship that you craft with that individual, that would determine your next deals and the connections, because they're going to know someone that they can connect with you. And next thing you know, it's connection. So I can't really speak to where you will end up ultimately on your path, but that's where you need to start at. I know that was long-winded, but I think it's something that a lot of people need to hear. And I just want to, again, if I'm going to do this webinar, I want to speak something in a way that adds value to people, that they can take that and actually implement that to be successful.
Absolutely. So two great nuggets I pulled from there is, number one, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity throughout real estate. It's a very, there's a broad scope of what you can attack and do and learn. And a good first step would be learning the lingo, try to understand some of it, maybe find certain niches you're really good at. But even more importantly, like getting around a mentor, someone who can really, sharpen your mind and get you where you want to be, bring value to them in some way. And I know from personally, like being in digital marketing for the last 9 years, a lot of real estate companies, they say, this person in the industry is the gold standard. We want to be like them. Like, majority of people are not content with where they are in the real estate world. They're always modeling after some of these bigger guys. So for anyone listening, I know for a fact, like, this is true. You should try to identify ways you can bring value, whether it be on these new social channels where people may not be, maybe their website, maybe their email material, whatever it may be. So that's great. And I want to dig into that more. But on the first topic of just how broad like real estate is and all these angles in which you can go, I'd love for you to dive into that a bit more, because for me, whenever I'm hearing you talk about that, as someone who's listened to Bigger Pockets for a few years, I immediately think about OPM, other people's money, and maybe like seller financing and like some of these creative ways where, if you're not sitting around with 100 grand, that's okay. Don't be discouraged, right? Like maybe dive into those and maybe some other ways people can get started, even if they don't have a bankroll already.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I'll tap from two sides, right? Bigger Pockets definitely has shifted lately with Pat Morby and talking a lot about seller financing and being creative. But before that, it was very a broad, holistic brushstroke of different real estate topics. So that's why I say start there, because they can get a wide spectrum range of different things within real estate. In terms of creative strategies, that goes with learning your niche and being able to fund and find opportunities. For example, I can speak of creative strategies in multifamily, but I can't speak necessarily in creative strategies in necessarily as much as being a flipper and a wholesaler. So for example, in multifamily, you would know that it's easier for me to syndicate and raise capital and do that than trying to buy a single family home in Southern California or buy a small multifamily. Because if I obviously that comes with experience and some other things, it's not that simple, but seller financing is actually a very common thing in commercial real estate, as you know. So but that goes with learning your niche. That also but it also in terms of being creative, obviously you can do seller. I'm not saying you can't do seller financing. You can do creative structures in single family and whatnot. It's definitely possible based off what you hear on Bigger Pockets for sure. My recommendation to people with that is it's rare. And just because it's rare and just because it's hard does not mean you should not do it. I don't want to say that and have people be deterred, because in order to be, you really got to ask yourself, and do you want to be average or do you want to be great? And there's nothing wrong with being average. I believe that. Like, there are a lot of average people out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to be average, have at it. But if you really want to be great, that's the difference between good and great, is that little extra effort, that discipline. And that discipline is going to mean maybe you cold calling people, which for those that don't know, cold calling is just picking up the phone and looking up operators and looking up brokers and property owners and calling them. That is what will make you stand out. It's doing that extra research to find out those different unique tactics. And you might fail 500 times, but you only need to get lucky once, because once you get lucky, you won. You got a deal. And you take that deal, and not only does that add to your resume and your credibility, but now you got money in your pocket and you leverage that and you let that momentum carry you to the next. And it's always about the law of the first deal through Michael Blank. He says it in his Financial Freedom podcast. Once you get your first deal, it's like a snowball effect, because you automatically get reputation and credibility in multifamily. And this also applies obviously to other things in real estate, but from a multifamily standpoint, since that's what I do, you get that first deal, resume, credibility. Then all the lessons that you learn from that first deal and any money or any equity and appreciation that you would get from it, you leverage that and you do your next deal and then your next deal and then your next deal. And you just can't stop it. And that's just how it goes.
That's true. I remember being in first grade, doing door-to-door sales of gift wrap with my dad and starting my lawn care company. And he was just like, get 100 no's. And I remember whenever I ran back on the 100th door, my dad was excited thinking I closed the deal, but he was just like, no, as a young kid, I was excited to get the no. And he told me that it added up. So it's true. That's such a great lesson. Now,
Yeah.
um, well, cool. I love that. And so we're talking a little bit about just some of these unique and creative financing ways. I think there's obviously a million ways to peel back that onion. We won't necessarily dive into that much more. There's a lot of good resources out there for that. But in terms of like bringing value and like connecting with people, obviously meetup.com is great. I
Mm-hmm.
personally love that site. I met some incredible people through there. But are there any other things in the community people can take part in? I know there's like CBRE groups too, I believe, like local ones and other things, but maybe touch just a little bit on that aspect a little bit. Like, what role has the meetup played for you, from like getting to where you were to where you are now, like where you're leading it and you're being able to pour into people? Tell us about that journey a little bit.
First and foremost, the meetup allows me to provide value. Goes back to value again. I don't care what I get out of it. If I can help other people connect with one person that takes them off, I win. If I can teach them something new that they don't know, I win. That's the ultimate goal anyway. That's why I don't want to do just the beers and deals. Because one thing that I found, again, it talks about looking at observing things in business. Because I think that's what a true entrepreneur does. You look at things around you and you look at the pitfalls and the negatives, and you're like, how can I make this better? And we do the same thing, especially being a Naval Academy grad, but it's like on steroids. It's like leadership. How can you make this better? If the system fails, if there's a crack in the chip of the armor, how can I piece it together and make the armor even more stronger, like Iron Man or something? And if I can, I noticed that a lot of the beers and deals events, there were a lot of agents and loan officers. No shade to agents and loan officers. But even for them, think about it. What benefit does it provide me if I'm in a room with 30 other agents and I'm an agent, or 30 other loan officers and I'm a loan officer? Ultimately, what is an agent and a loan officer trying to achieve?
They're
Clients,
coming for
right?
that commission.
They're looking for a client. So like, and it's great to build a network and it's great to build a team, but all of you are none of you really get benefit from that in any way. And that is the biggest downside that I've seen from a lot of the beers and deals. And also too, just, and again, I'm not throwing shade at those type of events. They're great events. I go to a lot of them. I'm just saying, being a Naval Academy grad, I am very picky of my time. And it really teaches you that the value of time, as well as like, if we're gonna do something, we got to do it right the first time, every time, 100%. We're not gonna do it halfway. If I'm gonna lead people, I have to give them the best of me every single day, even when I don't feel like it. So I apply that same thing, and it's just the same mindset in real estate and running the meetup group. If I'm gonna have a meetup group, I'm not just gonna put together a rinky-dink event and people don't get value out of it. The speakers need to be on point. I need to put a lot of thought in between the speakers that I bring in, and I want people to learn something. And it needs to be topics that I know they will want to know. Let me bring in CPAs. Let me bring in lawyers that are specialized for real estate investors, not just regular CPAs and attorneys. Let me bring in professionals, a panel that talk about note investing, because a lot of people don't know about note investing, or we talk about self-storage or mobile home parks, or how to effectively manage multifamily real estate or short-term rentals, whatever the topic is. It needs to be something that engaging, that people can walk out and be like, man, I'm so glad I came to the event tonight. Not even including the connections. I learned so much. And that's the whole goal. And in addition to that is the connection piece, a community where I'm not selling them on anything. The speakers aren't there saying, buy my book, buy my product. And I'm not saying, but that should come authentically based on your message, not standing, because that's the other thing. I've been to these events in San Diego, and literally the speaker would take the whole presentation and try to sell me. And I'm like, bro, you're literally sitting here trying to sell me on a boot camp for your flipping business. And we didn't walk any, and people were literally walking out. So aside from the connections and that, it's giving back to them, and again, not expecting anything in return. That is the whole purpose of the meetup for me. Number one, I would say maybe secondly, the connections help. Everyone knows everybody, and I live by the motto, everybody wins. I say that all the time to people that I meet in the podcast and just around the way. And you never know, I might be able to provide value for someone, and maybe years down the road, I get that random message or phone call and be like, hey Dre, I know you do multifamily. My buddy here wants to do a JV deal. My buddy here knows a property management company, and he lives in a great building. They're about to sell. You never know. But I'm not looking for that. But it also helps me just use that audience to give back and leverage that as a thought leader.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's wise. Time's definitely the most valuable asset. And that's typically why a majority of people get into real estate. Some folks say, hey, why are you doing it? And they're like, money. It's like, well, why do you want money? And it's like, oh, I want more time with family. It's like, okay, time, and if we're going to go to these meetups, they need to be valuable and quality. And it sounds like you run a really tight ship. That's exciting. And you're right. I think, bringing value to people, being a good steward of their time and setting that high standard, it attracts more people like that. So just by you being that type of a man and like serving in that way, it makes people want to come back. It probably helps them raise their standard because, like you said, if you're the janitor in the room of a millionaire, you're going to level up and be excited next time you're in that room. So every week it's probably getting better. I can just imagine. It sounds like a great
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. I have to put this plug in. Everything obviously is accomplished with a team. That's the most important part. It's not just me. I might be spearheading it, but I still have Jennifer and I still got Cameron. And I couldn't accomplish anything without them. Like everything is a team. Cameron and Jennifer are amazing. Jennifer brings a completely different perspective to the team that I couldn't bring. And that's the beauty of a team. And the same thing with Cameron. And I love working with both of them. We all come together, we bring our heads together, and we make the meetup better and we bring that community aspect to it. So I have to say that shout out to Cameron, shout out to Jennifer. It is all about a team effort.
There you go. Love it. Nice. Well, I think that's a great introduction to, a bit of who you are, what you're doing in the community, and like what outreach means to you. I would love to also just learn a little bit more about That's My Property, and maybe if we have some time, talk about Multifamily by the Slice in your podcast. But what's been going on with That's My Property, and what are maybe some of the goals you guys have with the new year?
Yeah, so that's my property. As you can tell by the name, it's an affirmation. And again, it goes back to adding value and outreach to people. I looked at the industry, and this is not shade to anybody that is in multifamily, whatever. It's not. But everyone is something capital. What makes me unique if I'm Evans Capital or Dre Evans, whatever, if everybody's named like that? How do I inspire you with that? There's nothing inspiring about your last name and capital, unless you're Grant Cardone and you have a big name. If you don't have a big name, what's inspiring about that? See, Open Door has a message behind it. The fact that it's
Yeah,
Open Door with Brandon Turner. And he can throw capital at the bottom and put his name because he's Brandon Turner. Everyone knows who he is. He's the former host of Bigger Pockets. But I looked at it and I was like, okay, if I'm going to create something, again, it has to be substance. I have to do it right. And so I formed That's My Property because it's an affirmation alone. You say the name of my business, I'm inspiring you. You can literally apply that to everything in your life. You can go to a flip, you can go to a multifamily, you can point at it, you can be like, that's my property. You can do that with everything. And if you constantly say that to yourself and believe that, you will achieve it. It's crazy because more than 80%, 90% of the battle is what's in your mind, not what you know, it's what you believe. It's like if I put the most gorgeous, sexiest woman in the world in a room, and every day I told her she was ugly, she would believe she was ugly. If I told her that every single day, and she could literally be the most gorgeous, stunning woman in the world, and everybody are like literally breaking necks every time she walked down the street, but she won't know that. She's gonna feel like I'm ugly because I kept telling her that. And so it's the same concept as naturally within my business name alone. I want to inspire people and trick people and make them believe that, yes, this is your property. Hence the sticky note. A sticky note is just what you write on as an affirmation. I'm a big sticky note person. That's how I was able to get out of the gang environment. It was putting quotes by Eric Thomas and TD Jakes, putting pictures of stuff or goals. That's how I bought my first property. When I was going through escrow and I was I was literally printing out the properties. Like, this one will be mine. That's my property. Circle the fourplex. I'm gonna get it. And it's powerful. You start doing that, you start writing your goals out every day before when you get up first thing, and then at the end of the day you go to sleep. I promise you, watch how much different your life will be. So that's the whole thing of the brand of That's My Property brand, is outreach and positivity within itself. But we strictly focus on started with multifamily real estate. We're going to expand this commercial real estate, value add, class A, and go from there. That's our bread and butter. Maybe a little bit short-term rentals, but we'll probably combine it with like multifamily. As you know, there's a way to do that. So we'll probably get into that. And then, Multifamily by the Slice is a podcast focused on commercial real estate, essentially unique insights, anything that we can do to educate people about multifamily real estate, commercial real estate, that they haven't heard from in a unique way. And I have that. And again, shout out to Ike. It takes a team. Ike is awesome. He's my co-host. He provides a unique value, a unique perspective to the podcast. I love having him as my co-host. He's awesome. So if you haven't, please check out Multifamily by the Slice podcast. Leave us a 5-star review because again, going to value, all the profits, we want to bring in enough sponsors where every single dime, 100% of the money that we make from the sponsorships, we want to give it back to organizations that we identify with. Wounded Warrior, because I'm a vet, 100 Black Men of Chicago, Youth Outreach of Chicago, and Boys and Girls Club, or even more if we identify and build those relationships with them. But we want to give those profits directly back to them. That's what we want to use the podcast for.
Awesome. And I know we always hear that, speak things into existence, like whatever you are, just like you look in the mirror and you say it to yourself, like that little cute blonde girl who like stares in the mirror in that internet video where she's like, you are beautiful, you're successful. Like, it really makes everybody smile. It's the truth. And one thing that I did last year, like I've always just been a relentless worker. Like I don't really like slow down. I just work and I've always done well. But the thing I did different last year is what you said. Like I actually wrote it down and I set it as the background in my computer and I achieved it. But the thing is at the end of the year, I actually had it just written. And then when I looked at it again, I was like, I did it. And it reminded me I wrote it at the beginning of the year. And the next year, it's not like the man has changed because I'm still working relentlessly. But the thing is, when you see that, boom, did it, and you start a new year, it makes you think, well, how much further can I push it? So I think, people, they're kind of, it's hard to rewire adults, like you can rewire a child, but I think for individuals, like if you can like notate it for yourself and like just every day speak it into existence and see it unfold, that's my property. And then you do it and you remember it does, there's something it does psychologically where it just wires you to push for more, to achieve more, like one thing I appreciate about, Samson and like some guys on our team is like, the dollars, like it's just a scoreboard, like if you're obsessed with money, that's like one problem, but the dollars is just kind of a scoreboard. And it's like, well, what can you do with that? How can you empower others? How can you give back? So I just love that point. And I had to share that little bit because I've seen it change in my life too. And I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah, and Bobby, it's like that book says, the book, The Go-Giver. That's it. Like money comes and goes.
I haven't read that book, The Go-Giver. Tell us a little bit about that.
The Go-Giver just talks about adding value to people, a life of purpose. When you have a lot of, at least for me from Chicago, when you have a lot of near-death experiences, and then when you go to the Naval Academy, it teaches you all about being a leader, being a person of substance and integrity and honor, and being a person of purpose. When you lead people, you have to be a person of purpose. You literally have people looking at you like, what's next, sir? What's next, ma'am? So you're forced, and Brad knows he's an EOD guy. He's a Naval Academy guy on Growthview. Yeah. So he knows what I'm getting at. He knows what I'm putting down. So it's those two alone. Like the money will come and go. Money's great. Like, don't get me wrong. Like it'll come, but like you can't, when I die, like no one's going to remember me for my bankrolls. They're going to be like, how did I make you feel? That's what I care about.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, good. I think this is a good like webinar and just like story and like different than a lot of things because we're always just talking about numbers, deals, and real estate in general. Like it's always about that, and I think that stuff's important. But I think this is like a message that I think is energizing, at least for me, and I know it is for the people that you're impacting. That's why you're married to this idea. You see probably the change in their life, and it makes you feel good to give back. So I love that this is on your heart and a big topic. What do you think in general, though, like to kind of look at the rest of the world, like let's just talk about this broadly, like beyond real estate. What's the biggest thing that you want to see happen in just men in leadership and just women in leadership that would be a good shift, like as we look forward into the future? And the reason I ask this is because if you look at history, like we typically operate in like 80-year cycles, and you'll probably get the wording right, but was it weak men create what times, and then like strong men create good times create weak men create this. But like we're getting to the point where we're at the end of the cycle where there's a lot of chaos in the world, there's a lot of things going on, and it feels like we're going to need some strong leaders to speak up and lead and, give back and give value. But where do you see the biggest need just in the marketplace as a whole, even outside of real estate, where people could step up and serve? How would you kind of answer that broad question?
Mm. Outside of the market, in general, when I look at social media as a tool, is great. It's a great way to market, and I understand it's a necessary thing that you need to do in business. But because of that, it does have some demons. And for youth as well as for older people, a lot of people are losing themselves. When I look at it, that's why I hire out my social media. I just hire it out and someone posts for me, and I'm not looking at people's stuff. I don't really care too. If I've always kept my circle small. Again, stemming from Chicago. If you care about me, you'll pick up the phone and you'll text me, you'll email me. I don't need to go on social media to see what you got going on in your life. I don't really care. So, because again, also too, if I'm busy trying to add value to other people, what time do I have to do aimlessly scrolling through a feed? People are counting on me, you know? So when that gut checks me,
Yeah.
like if I know, like if I don't do this, not only my immediate family, but how many lives, that's selfish. Like how many lives could I have touched? And I know I have these gifts. I know I have this ability. I know I have these talents. I think that's worse because there's so many people that have like a platform. They have like a leverage. And like if you don't use that, that's even worse because everybody don't have that ability. Everybody don't have that blessing. It's just like the athlete. It's just like J. Cole says it when, when he was in hip hop, he's not going to have that platform for a long time. And so while he has it, he has to use it to the best of his ability, the right way. So I think for me, is I just see a lot of people that don't know themselves and that they're looking for this competition of this status of money and material things. And there are great leaders out there. It's not everybody. There are some phenomenal people out there that inspire me. There's some phenomenal people out there that are doing great work for the world. So it's not like we're doomed and all hope is lost. But in general, that is a trend that I'm seeing as social media does rise and grow. Is a lot of people don't know themselves and they're looking to that. They're building their self-esteem and their ego and their emotions off of like some likes and what people say about them. And that's not you. You're so much more than that. And that's what I would tell people is just you got a lot of strengths and abilities and talents in you. And if you don't know what they are, go find out. Go talk to some people. Go join a lot of different things that can help you figure that out. Maybe go do sports or go do something medically related. Go find out or do things that you never thought you would be interested in or do. And you might find out a passion there, but and then once you find that, you can figure out your lane and your path in life for purpose to help people and to monetize it. That's what I see.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a term in technology called network effects. Like if only two people have a phone, the phone's not too valuable. But when you add a third, fourth, fifth, 100, 5,000 people, communications revolutionized. Same thing with social media. Everybody gets on Facebook. It seemed very honest and genuine at the beginning, and how it's being used now and the role it's playing in people's lives. It's causing a lot of issues. I agree, but there's a lot of good to it. But yeah, there's a lot of bad that comes from it too. And I think what you said, like going out and like giving value to people's life, pouring into them, creating a meetup, that also creates a network effect. You know how they say your net worth is your
Is your
net
net
worth.
worth? Yeah.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
network's your net worth. So, yeah, get offline, build a network, give back to other people, build that community, raise the bar locally, bring good people together. I love that, man. Cool.
No, yeah, man. Like I'll say this last thing and then in terms of like I said, the social media, like I get it. Like you want to connect with people, you want to see what people doing, but you got to take it in moderation. Because even me, like there's times where like I've never been a big social media person, but when I do get on there, sometimes like you get on Instagram, you get on Facebook, I'll start to see how it affects me, and I'm like, yo, I gotta stay off this, because like you could start seeing the way it makes you feel. Because again, it's hard to explain. And I don't know the scientifics behind it and what it does in our brain or anything, but somehow, some way, like the way it is, because everyone's just trying to post like the greatness of what they're doing, they're not posting their faults. So it's not like the full spectrum of their life. And then there's a lot of people that are faking it too. So it makes this perception. It's like you go online and everybody's winning, everybody's balling out, and you're like, fuck. Like, not, I'm sorry if I didn't curse, but
You're right.
but you're like, oh man, like I'm not there. I'm not this, I'm not that, like I'm not doing enough. And then you start like downing yourself and degrading yourself, like
Yeah.
just like that, like just from watching a few posts. And that's not healthy. If you imagine you doing that multiple times a day, yeah, you got to take it in moderation. I think like you said, man, there's goodness in it. Even aside from the business, there's nothing wrong with keeping in contact with people and all that. Yeah, there's goodness in it, but just in moderation.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, here's what we're gonna do. Everyone's got to post your screen time in the comments, and if you're over an hour a day, we're taking your device away. You're
Yeah,
grounded.
yeah, yeah.
Oh man. Well, I really appreciate you doing this and just kind of shifting the narrative a little bit. Instead of talking about the money and the deals, talking about the outreach and just giving people like a good jumping off point and just kind of sharing the heart behind your business and the heart of your team and everything. I can see we got behind you where people can reach you, but maybe just give us a little detail on where people can reach you and just get in contact with you if they want to say hey.
Yes, the ebook that will be free, that will add a lot of value to people on how I got started in multifamily real estate, will be available very soon, within the next month or two, in addition to the website that's under construction. But until then, Dr. Multifamily is what I'm known for. Dr. Multifamily on Facebook, Andre M. Evans on LinkedIn, or Dr. Multifamily on TikTok, or Dr. Multifamily on Instagram. Pretty much Dr. Multifamily on all platforms aside from LinkedIn. Since it's professional, it's just my name, Dre Evans. But you can reach me, hit me up. Like I said, Multifamily by the Slice, leave a review. Everything is trying to go and give back to profits and communities. And Opportunity Knocks can be found on all my social media platforms. You can look it up if you want to join the group. If you're in San Diego, LA, SoCal area, please come through. We host the event every other month. That's all I
All
got.
right, man. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome, man. Peace.